In this video you will learn how to make functions in Kotlin which are essential to know, and also how to override them, and the syntax that is needed to create them. Stay tuned. Object-oriented programming is not the only game in town. Functional programming can be less code and is more efficient at times. Not that we're not going to look how object programming works along with functional programming. So let's get started. So function. Fun is the keyword in this function, and it cannot be changed and declares a function. Function name can be changed by the programmer along with parameter name. And we'll look at an example for that. And you need to take note of the semicolons. They're very important in Kotlin. So it's a parameter name and the parameter type. This could be like integer, boolean, float, and such. And also the return type. It can be like a integer here. And this is our example. So for this example, it has a fun keyword, correct? It has a double, and this is how you have to write the function name. The first letter is not capitalized, so it's double. If you had another word, then you would capitalize. Like double fun, you would capitalize the fun or function. So x is the variable name of type int, and the return type is int. And it's gonna literally double the function, so it's gonna return 2 times what you put in. And that's the most basic example in Kotlin of a function. Here's our code, and I wrote in Vim. Here's the code, the function we have: fun double x. It's gonna double it. Here's some main method. We're setting the original to 7, and then this is how you call it. It's very important. Double original. And you need to call it in a val result. And then we print it here. Print the double, the original is result. And we should get 14. And let's run it. There we go. The double of 7 is 14. Okay, for our next function, we have a function that has 2 parameters. So you can see here, that's a keyword. This is one parameter. It has a comma in between the 2 parameters. So usually in like Android code, you might have 7 inputs, and you want to do parameter, comma, space, like a new line, and then the next parameter. And if it has a comma at the end, that's called a trailing comma. And Kotlin will let you write it that way, and it will compile. And it comes in handy because you might be moving how many parameters there is, or you might want to add one quickly, and you just leave that trailing comma. And in Kotlin, it will still compile, and that's very friendly for developers. Here is the function we ran with every parameter has a line. So this is the first parameter. It has one line by itself. Next parameter has another line with a trailing comma. And this is the same function as the other one. And this style is more in use with Google, the documentation with Android development, and how they explain things. So it's not uncommon to have almost like 7 parameters or inputs for one function. And it gets very hectic very quickly. Another twist to our function that has 3 parameters. Let's look at our function right now. It's named read, and it has 3 different read has 3 different inputs. And this is normal, b, that's the name of the variable, type byte array, comma, off, this is a weird part, equals 0, that's new, equals b dot size. So that's a default value. And if you don't call it explicitly, it'll set off to 0, the length to b dot size. So the only thing you would need to put in would be read and then some byte array for that function. That is all. And then everything will fall from there. But if you wanted to, you can put in the b and then another integer and then another integer, and any like permutation or a combination of that sort. So it becomes important when you do overloading. So overloading is calling the same function but with different parameters. So that's literally overloading. So you can see read byte array. That's one function. Another way to call it would be read byte array and then a 1. And you get the idea. So by defining defaults, you're able to cut down on the number of overloading functions. And that's kind of a key difference or a twist where it doesn't come from Java. I don't believe Java at the previous versions would allow you to do something like this, but Kotlin does. And another thing to keep in mind is when you overwrite a function, that is, you extend a class that has a function. So when a class has a function, that's called a method. So when you overwrite that method, it would be like you have a class, you extend it, and that function that was in the parent, you change it to over in the child. So it would have a different function body. So that'll be our next slide to look at. We're going to talk about how to override a method. So it's basically when you have like a parent class and a child class. So you can completely rewrite the method that's in the parent class. So let's say we'll go over the example next. And they need to have the keyword open. That's very important. If you do not have the open keyword in front of the class keyword, you won't be able to extend it. And by extend it is to have a child class based on that class. So if you have like a parent class, you have a bunch of methods, and those methods and variables will be inherited down to the child class. So if you don't specifically state the method in the child class, it'll just use the parent class method. So we'll go over an example. Our example is the bird class, and it can fly. And of course, birds can fly, so we're gonna say something like birds print, birds fly. And then in our subclass, like penguins are a type of birds, but when they do not fly. So when we print the fly method, it's gonna say penguins don't fly, penguins swim, and then we'll have a swim method too. And this is a UML diagram, and here it says that it's overriding, and here's the other method, just for you to be able to share ideas, and this is the industry standard. Okay, so we're doing our example concrete. This is a bird class. It contains a function fly, and it prints out birds fly. And it needs a keyword open, so it'll be able to make a child class. And the way that we make the child class, it's like we explained with a semicolon. Here it is. Class penguin. This expands bird. And then this will be overridden. The fly from the previous one. Let's go back. You see it has open function to the keyword. That way it can be overridden. Function fly, birds fly. And then here, the penguin class, which extends bird, has a fly, which is penguins do not fly. So when we make a class that's penguin and tell it to fly, it'll print this out and not that birds fly. And now it's parent class, which is, so this is gonna get overridden to this. And we also added a swim class here just for fun. And this is how we need to run it within the function main. And this is how you make the class. Val, my bird. Bird equals bird. And same as for the penguin class here. And you can see that it's going to print like the bird behavior. And then this is where it runs the bird. So this should be here. So it's going to run birds fly. And then when you do my penguin fly, it's going to say penguins do not fly. And you can call the swim function if you want. And that's basically the working example on how to override methods. We were able to make a function in Kotlin and know the parameters, the keywords, open, fun, and how to override them. I hope you enjoyed this video, and make sure you like and subscribe.